Hello and welcome to On Leading with Greatness. I'm Jim Salvucci. This week's installment, how to hack your leadership strategy for good. You've got to think about big things while you're doing small things so that all the small things go in the right direction. Alvin Toffler. You've probably had this same experience. The other day, I had a small project to complete at my house. I'm pretty handy and can figure things out, but this one was a bit outside my experience. I decided to consult the great oracle of our age, YouTube. Sure enough, I found a bunch of DIY videos, and after sitting through their tedious introductions, was inundated with detailed advice about how to proceed. All great. Thanks for the free pointers. The only problem was that not one of these super helpful videos addressed my specific needs. My house is nearly 150 years old, and it has created a century and a half's worth of owners who executed their own DIY projects to varying degrees of competence. The videos, though, addressed a more typical set of circumstances. To be fair, the videos were mostly excellent given that context, offering details and camera angles that clarified the steps needed to complete the task. It's just that the advice was generic and centered on the lowest common denominator. My specific needs, and the needs of many, or maybe most people, I would guess, just didn't come up. Tough luck. I was still on my own. Perhaps you're asking, what else could the videos do? They can't address every variable and permutation. And the answer is simple. If instead of just getting into step-by-step strategies, one or two videos took a more fundamental approach, explaining the why and how of the project, I could have understood my situation better and adapted the strategies they offered accordingly. Generic one-strategy-fits-all advice usually ends up helping few, if any, if they don't understand the fundamentals. And it's the same with the many gurus who dole out leadership guidance across the internet and at your favorite booksellers. If you Google how to lead, you'll get a smattering of principles, but most suggestions will focus on how-tos, DIY leadership advice. And I get it. Just as with the home repair videos, the idea is to get down to business. Don't bother with why things work or even how. Dive into the what and maybe the when, where, and who of the matter and be done with it. But again, like the DIY videos, this approach will mostly prove inadequate. Sure, leadership strategies can come in handy to address this issue or undo that snag, but they only carry you so far. You may fix your immediate problem, but will learn nothing about preventing the next. Or still, also like the videos, too often the one-size leadership strategy doesn't fit at all. What's an aspiring leader to do? The thing that most appeals to us about strategies is its biggest failure. It's performative, but not fundamentally functional. And we love performance. I often appear on podcasts and give presentations, and the number one request from hosts is for actionable items. That is, performance tips. Nothing wrong with that, except I can generate such items from now until I keel over from boredom while helping almost no one. Without the core, the why and how of it all, most would-be leaders struggle to find generic strategies that fit their circumstances and implement them successfully over time. Forget adapting. Our typical inclination is to attempt to fit the situation to the strategy or just forge ahead, ignoring the disconnect altogether. Either choice assures failure. Here's what's really maddening, though. The tyranny of strategy advice is so pervasive in leadership counseling that even addressing the basics is pitched as strategy. I recently heard a podcast that promised a strategy for implementing AI in the workplace without undermining your values. The advice was sound, actually quite good, but it was not strategy. It addressed fundamental principles, not approaches. Why would someone feel obliged to call it a strategy then? Sticking to your principles is not a strategic move. It's the most foundational thing you can do. Not an application, not a hack, not a formula for better leadership. It's the thing itself. It is better leadership. Put the oxygen mask on your values first. So how do I respond when I get asked for those actionable items on how to become a better leader? I have one piece of advice. If you want to be a good leader, secure the basics first. If I have time, I give a longer answer about auditing the self. Start there. What are your values? Do your behaviors reflect them? How do others perceive you? Build your character. If you've done so already, do it again and keep doing it. It's not a one-off. With more time still, I dive into the 4 C's of leadership success: character, communication, compromise, and collaboration. But if I'm asked to sum up my best advice in a few words, I say, don't be a jerk. When I'm feeling really cheeky, I say, don't be an asshole. Now, if the forum demands more uplifting and less evocative rhetoric, I say, be a decent human all the time. Without this basic core, your strategy will fail. Any strategy will fail. Maybe not immediately, but soon. You simply can't implement a leadership strategy with any confidence unless you've done the work of actually being and acting like a leader. And that starts with developing the self and sticking to your values. It's true even at the organizational level. When I was a university executive, I watched strategic plan after strategic plan collapse or just fade away. These schemes all looked excellent on paper, beautiful on a website, and impressive when rolled out at the Board of Trustees meeting. Nonetheless, they consisted mostly of empty platitudes about the 5 pillars or the 4 pillars or 6 pillars that support the mission and lists of implementation steps to reach generic goals. The running joke was that university presidents would spend gazillions of dollars on consultants, devote a year or more developing a plan, and exhaust just about every campus resource in the process. Then they'd leave the wretched thing moldering in a vinyl binder on a shelf for 5 years before starting the whole fiasco over. These well-laid plans always seem to collapse in the face of that seemingly immovable object, the status quo, once again demonstrating the apt observation, often erroneously attributed to Peter Drucker: culture eats strategy for breakfast. At one university where I was a dean, the president noisily pretended to follow the strategic plan, but only to suit his current agenda. Otherwise, he'd ignore it. Every June, we'd go through this big rigmarole to develop our 1-year business plan based on our overarching strategic plan, which sounded like a dandy approach. I'm sure the university trustees thought so. Ha! You wouldn't believe some of the stupid exercises he put us through to perform for his charade. One time we had to build 3-dimensional models of our university values, the ones he ignored or deployed to suit himself, which were then put on display in a lightly used back area of the library. The president loved this nonsensical pageantry, forcing executives to play like children. Afterward, the only time we saw the vaunted annual business plan was when the president waved it around to justify some obnoxious movie he wanted to make. Otherwise, it functionally didn't exist. An example? The number 1 action item each year was to hire more qualified full-time faculty. Yet, we rarely allocated additional funds to do so. Instead, year after year, we raided other resources, including cannibalizing the part-time faculty budget, to increase the faculty size in an attempt to keep up with enrollment growth. In practice, faculty hiring was not a budget priority, even though it literally sat atop the list of budget priorities. I'm not telling this story to grind an axe. I buried that hatchet years ago. The point is to illustrate how divorced from reality strategy can be. Simply put, the leadership of that university, starting with the president, talked about our institutional values ad nauseum, but regularly demonstrated that they were fluid and fleeting. We couldn't follow the strategic plan because we didn't adhere to our own mission, the statement of our fundamentals, plain and simple. What's true of the institution is true of the individual leader. You can't implement leadership strategies effectively if you don't live your values. Just like a university, a business, or any organization, you as an individual have an internal status quo, a zone of inanition. Strategies alone won't break your complacency. You need first to return to your core values, to reset and disrupt false contentment. What why and what how drive your choices. Then and only then will leadership strategies prove workable. The status quo is like a broken record. That analogy is okay to use again, right? If there's a skip in a vinyl album, it'll repeat over and over. There is no strategy to permanently defeat a skip. There's no YouTube hack. To practice sound leadership, you must reset the needle to avoid that rut and stay on course, or buy yourself a whole new album. How effectively do you distinguish between leadership fundamentals and strategy? What do you do to build on the fundamentals? Leaders eschew mere strategy when core principles are at stake, and I can help. Unlock the great leader within. Download my free resource, the Transform to Greatness Toolkit, now at thegreatleadershiptoolkit.com. I look forward to hearing from you.